No rest for us. We are going to move straight on to our next session. This is session 4, and we are looking at cloud native beyond the core. It is fair to say we have covered cloud native probably in every single DSP Leaders event we've done, but this year, we want to move it and see where telcos are going next or have to go next, and hence, beyond the core, because as we say, cloud native has kind of become table stakes, but we're finding in the work we're doing that probably only half of the telcos really qualify as truly cloud native organizations. A lot have transformed their core networks, but the rest of the infrastructure, BSS, OSS, edge, access networks, and so on, do seem to be trapped behind legacy architectures. So we really want to know how operators can complete this journey and unlock the full promise of cloud native operations, because as we've heard earlier today, without cloud native, are you going to become AI native? So let's see how far we can get on solving the industry's issues in 45 minutes. Franz here is going to be co-hosting with us, but first of all, I'd like to introduce all our guests, and if I can start on our far side.
Thank you. My name is Gary Mackenzie. I'm the General Manager for the Telco Business Unit at SUSE. I've been doing various things around open source and networks for almost 20 years now. So it's very interesting to see the changes we've seen over the last, even as long as we've been doing these events, as I've sort of been at these events. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Oh yeah, thanks Gary. Warren?
I'm Warren Bayek, a member of the Office of the CTO at Wind River, overseeing the strategy and features of the intelligent edge. And similar comments, it's amazing how far we've come in just a few years we've been doing this, Guy.
Thanks, and Rich?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. So Rich Stevens, VP for Red Hat in EMEA Telco. Been with Red Hat just over a year, probably from a cloud native. I have 11 years at Microsoft before that, so have a view from, I guess, both sides of the cloud native arena. But yeah, really great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Franz?
So hello everyone, I'm Franz Seiser. I'm with Deutsche Telekom Technik, so that's the technology part of the German operations. And I'm running DevOps teams that are building and running cloud-native packet core networks, all the parts you need to provide data services to our customers.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone. Franz, as I said, is our co-host for this session. So Franz, I'm going to ask you if you'd like to take to the podium and deliver our DSP Leaders address. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Now, as Guy said, we have that panel for quite some time, and I'm at least sure it's the third time in a row I have the pleasure to co-host that one. So either I'm such a good co-host or you didn't find someone else, I don't know. But in the area where I'm living in Germany, they say if something happens 3 times in a row, it's a tradition. So welcome to the traditional cloud native panel. Looking at the previous discussions, which will not be centered around AI, but still extremely relevant for AI, and I will explain you why that is the case. So as we heard in the morning already, we're all striving for autonomous networks, level 4+, and AI, one of the key enablers. And if you go to any of the events lately, there was one topic, and that was AI, and then was AI, and then was AI. And somehow that feels a little bit to me like you are discussing a house, and you're on the 2nd floor, and you're discussing the rooms and the furniture. You just somehow forget there are still some questions on the basement. That's where we are, by the way. And that basement is a cloud-native network, at least from my perspective. And we're discussing this for quite some time, and we've been here, and especially last year after the session, I was also approached by some people, hey, you're doing so much in DT, why are you not talking more about that? And we listened. And of course, also we concluded a big part of our journey. So we published a white paper around Barcelona. If you haven't seen it, the easiest way to get is find me on LinkedIn, and you will see a couple of posts. where we really describe how we build something we call horizontal telco cloud, which is a cloud-native architecture, including the cloud layer, where we have plenty of players here, but it also includes the automation layer. And the good thing is, because I really get the feeling people are somehow omitting that, but luckily you had this panel before, so there are still people thinking about the automation piece as well, because that's really the secret sauce to get the thing going. But also keep in mind, and that became then clear to me when I was thinking a bit, the concept of cloud native, when that was invented, nobody talked about AI, or only a few people, right? So this big change started lately, but AI needs two things, as we learned: data, reliable data, and a software-controlled or a programmable network. Guess what? Both come out of such a cloud-native architecture. As this only works if it's fully automated, and to give you a little bit of impression, we're working against the vision that's very simple to remember. It's V210. It means a new product idea, from idea and implementation to roll out in the network, 3 months. Not 6 months, not 18 months, 3 months. 2 days, in case you need to update a piece of the network. So when you get the software from the supplier, you test it, you deploy it, 2 days. 1 day, if it's an emergency patch, security stuff and that, and everything is done with zero-night shift. And the enabler, again, is full automation of the whole thing. And the whole thing is, of course, if you fully automate, it's fully software controlled. That's exactly what you need for an AI to happen. That's what we're working against, and that's also what we see happening, right? And the second thing I said, this system provides real-time or near real-time data in our data lakes, which, as just discussed, this is what you need from AI. Keep in mind, in the past, you had 1 data byte every 5 minutes. No AI works with every 5-minute data point. And this is why it's so important to scale that out across your whole infrastructure, because otherwise all your vision on level 4 autonomous network will never go to work, because you're not having the infrastructure and you don't have the data, so how the hell shall it work? And if you want to do it in an efficient manner, our perspective, our view is it only works if you have a proper cloud-native architecture in place. Now let's see how we do that.
Franz, thank you very much. Round of applause for Franz. Yeah, third time co-hosting. That's just because you're the best.
Okay? Thank you.
Yeah. So we expect a lot of you in the next 45 minutes.
Oh
okay?
my God.
Right. And thank you for establishing this new tradition for us. We will continue next year as well, I'm sure. Look, we said at the beginning there about moving cloud native beyond the core. Can we kind of get established at the moment where telcos are transforming and which part of their infrastructure stack is being focused on next? Where are they moving beyond the core? Where are we seeing that acceleration of cloud native that we need to see? Where is it happening beyond the core at the moment? Franz, can maybe we start off with yourself?
I mean, I can't tell you what the ecosystem is doing. I can tell you what we are doing. And we're doing, if you would only do 5G core, it would be much too few. It's like thinking about an autonomous car. It can steer and it can accelerate, but it cannot brake. I would not use that car, right? So you need to have the full set of capabilities. So you need to do that across a full service chain. If you only do parts, then you would never come to full autonomous. So that's what we are doing, of course. And core for us is not only packet core, it's the whole set, including database, customer database, including voice, including all the systems you traditionally call core in the first step. But in the end, whatever is softwareized needs to go into that architecture in the stepwise approach. It's a bit difficult, and you know the ongoing discussions for something like ORAN, where also I personally tried for some time, but it's not progressing as fast as we hoped. But on the core side, we're pretty sure we will be able to bring everything into this horizontal architecture. Vast majority, my gut feeling, is less than 18 months.
Wow.
But that's still, it's only the core, it's not the whole end-to-end service chain. So that's happening a lot. OSS in our architecture, there is no OSS anymore. That's all part of the orchestration automation layer. So the secret sauce in our architecture, it's all horizontalized. So there's one cloud layer there is one automation layer, not one per system, because then you are back in the silo world. We really horizontalized everything. So every application, and 5G core is just an application in that perspective, needs to go into that system, because then you can act and work end to end from the very beginning. And then this whole system starts to scale and to work properly. So that's exactly where we are going down that route.
Great, very progressive. Thanks for sharing that. Our other three guests here, between them, have probably got a wealth of experience in talking to a huge number of telcos. So, what are the three of you saying? Gary, I'm going to start with you. What are you seeing from telcos as to where they are moving? What percentage of their telco infrastructure has actually been transformed to cloud native?
Well, first off, I think what Franz says has a lot of merit, that there's a lot of blurring of boundaries between areas, like things we might previously have said that's OSS is being done as part of core projects now, and that does move the areas a lot. I think this is an area where you could say almost any number and defend it reasonably. For the sake of debate, let's say I think 20 to 30% is probably a reasonable number once we get beyond the core. I think part of the interesting question there, though, is how you measure that. There are sort of two sets of questions: that how cloud native are you as an organization? Does that mean how much you're adopting containers, how much you're automating your Kubernetes deployments, all those things? Or does it mean how are you getting the outcomes that we were promised effectively as part of cloud native? How are those affecting the business outcomes? I think for a lot of operators, there's still a disconnect between the answers to those two questions. And there is at the extreme end, there's a risk that how cloud native you are becomes almost a vanity metric if you're not recognizing the business outcomes that should provide. How much more efficient is your network? How much more agile is your operations? How much more quickly can you launch services? All those things are probably the core things we need to measure as part of that, rather than just did we adopt the primitives, the attributes, but didn't get the outcomes along the way.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Gary. Warren?
Yeah, I'll add to that a little, or frame it a little differently. I agree. In fact, one thing we need to talk about is even the definition of cloud native, right? I think that means a different thing. If you asked everyone in this room, I think you'd get everyone in this room plus one answers, right? So essentially, the telcos had to do cloud native in the core, right? The move to 5G obviated that for economic reasons. As we evolve 5G, the desire and requirement to move more cloud native procedures outside the core is what we're seeing now. And I agree, I think 30% is probably a defensible number. Again, it's a definition problem for me. And frankly, the technology questions are pretty easy, right? We know we have to containerize, we know we have to add Kubernetes, things like that. That's really not what cloud native means, right? It's more about the operational procedures, the business outcome questions. Are we really treating the entire end-to-end, as Franz said, that's a really aspirational look at it. Are we treating the entire telco network as one large core cloud? And I think today we're not, frankly. I know that aspirationally, and I know the DT is further along in looking at their network like that. So I think the answer is really operator dependent. I think a variety of operators are way in different parts of the journey. But the key is to understand that this goes far beyond just containerizing your workloads, right? That's frankly the easy part. Bringing all the things we've heard in previous panels today, the human part of this, the human part of becoming cloud native, I think it's underrated. So that's another part where I think operators are pretty far behind.
Thanks, Warren. Rich, what are your views on this?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, sort of spending most of my time traveling, meeting chief network officers, CIOs, it's horizontal telco cloud, as we prefer to call it, and as Franz is calling it, it is prevalent in every operator discussion right now. Either projects that are ongoing and live and underway and deployments are happening, or the planning is going on in the discussion. I think it's very true that we don't look at the domains in the same way as we're now in a horizontal mode, but it's very much, focusing on the core, then looking at things like BSS, which is a challenge, but as an adjunct to core, and that's an effort that's happening, as a bolt-on in most of the conversations we're having. And then we're yet to get further into edge and RAN, and that conversation is a lot further behind, right? But I think fundamentally the energy and the momentum right now is around horizontal cloud is huge.
It's good to hear. I mean, Franz, you are at the one of the telcos at the forefront of this. I mean, when we look at the whole spectrum of telcos from Tier 1 to beyond, not everyone is anywhere near what you're doing. Is this something you'd advocate to others as a best practice approach, or is it dependent on size of the telco?
Well, the intention why we did this white paper and some stuff around, and also why we're talking about, of course, we wanna encourage people, if they're still in doubt or not, they start the journey. So we had this cloud native discussion. Yes, of course, not everything is. If you take cloud native according to CNCF, yes, many network functions are not cloud native. Most likely they never will be cloud native. Yeah, because you have standards, you have point-to-point protocols, you have stateful functions. Now you can either wait for another 5 years and sit in your silo and stay inefficient, or I say, okay, I find workarounds. And what we are saying is you can find workarounds. Of course you cannot do rolling upgrades on cloud without talking to the application first, because some applications you need to take special care, but that all can be done. It's all about really engaging and say, guys, from our perspective, the ecosystem is ready, the industry is ready. There are plenty of companies out there, because we didn't do it on our own. We did it together with partners, and 2 of them are even so on these panels right here, who are partners of that event. So there is enough knowledge out there to get it going, and they can help you to bring in it. Do we need to build it exactly like we did? Because we did the cloud layer ourselves. We built the automation layer ourselves, all based on open source. That nobody forces you to do it exactly like that. That's an individual discussion. How much do you want to do it? How much you, for whatever reason, want to partner? What I also can share is, for doing that, we did not increase our workforce by 1 single person. That was all done with the existing workforce that was going down all the time. So also efficiency effects we see coming and paying off. So this is not coming at higher cost. So we do that while we have our steady decrease of workforce. So that's all doable. You just need to get it going. There is enough knowledge around the industry. Just make it happen. The intention is we consumed a lot from open source. So that's also a way to give it back, because this is a kind of blueprint we share. In order to do, and hopefully also that helps a little bit to limit fragmentation, to get more people saying, okay, if they can do it and people can help us, we hopefully can start going down that route as well. Because as I said, from our perspective, that's inevitable if you are serious with autonomous level 4 networks.
So, given what you said there, that there is enough knowledge out there for telcos. Rich, maybe I could start with you on this next point. What are the barriers that are actually preventing telcos from either taking these steps or accelerating and pushing further? And are these barriers, are they organizational? Are they technical barriers? Are they relationship barriers?
I think, and it's been said already, I think in earlier sessions, for us, the telcos that are most effective and most active and moving forward at pace are the ones that are trying to fix their organizational challenges. You see a lot of conversations where bringing together the different cloud silos into one group and into one organization. I think the technology, between us and the open source community, the technology is tested, right? It's out there, it's running, it's doing what it needs to do. Yes, we'll find new use cases and we'll build those together with our partner ecosystems. But I think, in reality, if you really want to genuinely get to a horizontal cloud, the organizational piece are critical, and it unlocks the ability then to have a single common platform, which is not just a piece of technology or an installation, but it's actually an operating model, a lifecycle management, a capability where you're able to run most effectively. And as Franz was saying, the speed that then starts to generate does cause its own challenges and its changes, and bringing together IT mindset or software mindset in a better way into the network world, and we're seeing it working. So yeah, all power to it, and let's keep the acceleration.
Yep, absolutely. Warren, is the organizational factor the top of the barrier list there?
Yeah, I think it is at the top for sure. There's other barriers. I think you hit the main points that Organizationally, we're seeing, just like we are in technology, the IT-OT convergence, right? So the ability for the IT mindset to infiltrate the OT parts of your organization is proving to be pretty challenging. Human beings are involved here. So they've built these silos culturally for many, many years, right? A lot of careers are tied to kind of owning my little piece of this architecture. So breaking those barriers is a big piece of what has to happen to go fully cloud native. I will say from the technology side, though, I fully agree. We understand how to do this, and we do get it. What changes, though, as we move, the further you get from the core, fundamentally, the cloud native requirements change, right? In the core, you're basically in a homogeneous environment. The further you get from that, you're dealing with a very different environment where you have heterogeneous hardware, easy for me to say, where hardware matters again, is the way I've heard some people say it, that we have to understand that as you try to cloud nativize the extreme edge in the RAN world, you have to take into account the changes and the requirements. So the ability to do the things you do operationally in the core at the edge become more complicated. So how we solve those problems, I think we know how to do it. It's just we have to get from A to B, and we can't wait 5 years, as you're saying, right? We have to do it in pieces. We have to find the right parts and the right ways to operationalize the edge so that we can consider it cloud native, so it will be ready for all of the other things the earlier panels talked about.
Interesting. So, Gary, we've talked about organizational barriers. We talked about it gets more complex as you go further away from the core. What are you seeing as well?
I think I would echo those 2 points quite strongly. I think as both my sort of industry colleagues have said, the technology problems are largely solved at this point. There are still maybe a few little hard technical lifts here and there, but not many. So a lot of it is organizational. I would put that at the top of the stack. I think, extending what we are doing in the core to other domains is a key aspect, like finding ways to use the same primitives, the same paradigms across the estate is a challenge. I think in the next few years, focus will also be a challenge somewhat. As Franz said at the beginning, everybody's focusing on, the second floor or, maybe decorating the house, and we're still trying to make sure the plumbing is in place in parts of it. And, as we talk a lot about AI, that sucks a lot of air from the room about the underlying infrastructure, and I think that's both in sense of focus and perhaps in sense of resources will be one of the things which sort of affects the space in the next few years.
Thanks, Gary. Franz, I don't like the fact that cloud native, we're in the basement. I think that's a bit rotten, isn't it? It's a bit unfair. We need to get out in the light.
Where's the elevator?
Where's the elevator? There we go. Where's the elevator? We're going to use that one. Thanks very much.
We are there.
Franz, we heard there about it gets more difficult, more complex as you go away from the core. It's surmountable. You can sort this, but it sucks up more manpower, more thought time, more resource to do that.
I'm very much on the core side now, so I cannot comment too deeply on access. Of course, we're looking on transport layer. So wherever you have a kind of control software, of course, you can talk about bringing it in the cloud and make it part of that architecture. And that will happen step by step. There is also a second pretty famous activity going on, which is called A4, which is also publicly discussed in many areas, where we try to do a lot of change on the fixed access side, right? Where we also follow such kind of paradigms, but access projects run on a completely different timelines. The good thing is core projects can be done much quicker because you don't have the problem of hundreds and thousands of sites you need to touch, and if you don't do it right in the first place, the most expensive thing is you have to go there again and fix it. So it's much easier, and I think also the economics for the time being seem to work much better on more centralized system. But whatever is a centralized system, there's hardly any reason not to go down that route. And then it's more the discussion, do you go on a private cloud like we build? That's one of the discussions still ongoing. What do you do on your private cloud? Where do you cooperate? Because even though we are building on our own cloud, that doesn't mean everything goes on that cloud. That cloud is really built for network production. Can it compete with the dynamics and the different loads that you can get from a hyperscaler? No. You know what happened to hardware prices. We cannot afford to have thousands of servers spare just in case That's not how this thing is. Of course, we always have a certain amount, but so different parts of the whole machinery network needs to be solved differently.
Okay.
So this is really what we are looking at is production of connectivity services. Some also BSS you can discuss, does BSS need to go on my private cloud or can't this sit somewhere else much more cost efficient? Because in the end we always of course also looking on efficiency.
Thanks, Franz. Just going to give some advance notice to our guests in the back of the room. Start thinking about a question because we're coming to you. We're coming to one of you in about 5 minutes' time. So this is DSP Leaders. This is digital service provision. So, what new digital services are possible once your network infrastructure is fully cloud native or as near to fully cloud native as we can? What becomes possible then? Hey, Warren, when you have your conversations, what's being discussed in terms of services? What we're looking at?
So this is the real question, isn't it?
This is it.
When I sit with operators, it's the very first question they ask when I go through this whole presentation is, what do I do with all of this, right? How do I make money? So this is the core question. And in the end, why are we here, right? Why do telco operators even exist? It's really to provide services to our customers, right? We can't forget that. That's ultimately what we do. So right now, voice obviously and data and the connectivity is what we've monetized over the years. I think, I don't know if it was at the last session here or last event you had where we heard that for the past X years, in 10 or 15 years, this telco growth is capped in the low single-digit percentages, right? The growth of this industry is very low. So in order to change that, we have to get to these new services. So all of that to say, what are the new services? I guess the real key here is to look at what we're building, this ultimately cloud-native, once we build this entirely cloud-native infrastructure, is to not think of it as a telco environment anymore. It's really a programmable cloud everywhere. And what I like to say is the telco operators have built the most unbelievable real estate empire, right? You have hundreds of thousands of sites worldwide, or if you're in a countrywide, that you uniquely give access to all your consumers, to places that no other industry can reach. So what you do with those is, frankly, there's a lot of smart people in this room, there's a lot of smart people on the stage. We can't possibly begin to imagine all of the use cases that are going to be possible once we build this service infrastructure. One that I like to talk about, and one of my esteemed Aptiv colleagues is here, is the treating of a car as a mobile data center, right? Cars aren't vehicles anymore. They're rolling data centers, right? So the ability to monetize things like we showed something in MWC where through a partnership with an insurance company, we were creating safer driving scenarios, right? Insurance companies, that is the largest industry in the world by a large margin. If you can save a very small amount of money per driver to an insurance company, that's something very valuable to them. And as a consumer, I'm in the US, I'm not going to give Verizon any more money for my cell phone. But if they can get me to save $50, $100 a year for my car insurance, I will gladly put that into a pot and they can divvy it up through partnerships. And that's kind of one way I see telcos monetizing these kind of environments, is to find partnerships with large industries that can use this real estate empire they've built.
How much of this, though, is down to the cloud-native transformation programs of the networks? Because we've been covering this, as you said, since the very beginning. 2019, our first event, we've advocated cloud-native first, be able to offer these services second. And now we get AI in the mix, and now we're hearing cloud-native to AI-native services. So is this dynamic changing at all, or is it just the same, just wrapped slightly differently? Gary?
I would say I think AI is in part the missing piece of the puzzle that we've been looking for in places. As Warren well says, telcos have a phenomenal real estate, but that goes beyond the locations and into some of the data as well. Mm-hmm. And being able to monetize that has, to some extent, always been the dream. And I think AI may be the missing piece of the puzzle that lets us do new things with that. And I would very much echo the sentiment that there is so much potential. It would be foolish for anyone to stand up and say they are certain about what the core service offerings that will drive revenue in future are. I think that's wishful thinking to be too certain about that. But there is a lot of potential out there, and I think the core thing right now is we're at a point where we can start potentially doing things which don't scale to prove the revenue demand in some spaces in the industry. We have, perhaps in the past, because we have lacked agility in some places, we've had to commit to ideas quite wholeheartedly, let's say. And perhaps what cloud native gives us is more agility so that we don't have to commit quite so completely, and we can try concepts, we can try things more easily, and not all of them will work. But that's the cost of doing that is coming down through cloud native should be the outcome we're looking for.
Sure. Thanks, Gary. And Rich, these new digital services, these new business models we talk about, are they really only fully realizable with a full cloud native transformation, or what about the hybrid setup? We were talking at the beginning about only half the infrastructure being cloud native and moving forward.
So common platform is a well-used term, right? And I think in reality, in a perfect world, yes, one common platform across everything with one management plane, one automation capability does give you the ability then to do things like opening, network as a service, being able to open to the development community in the ecosystem, the open source community, which is enormous and full of incredible people, incredible use cases, a bit as Vish was saying earlier, use case driven. We get to a point there where you expose, and we've been talking about opening the network to the world for a while, but the ability to be able to have that development community working, treating the network as an enabler for software development, I think is a key place where we're going. And in reality, that should be able to work. Yes, it's in an ideal world, it would be cloud native across the piece. Hybrid can work for some pieces. It can. We're working with a few B2B providers where we're basically inside the B2B world, and we're offering a cloud native estate inside of B2B to be able to offer applications from cloud to edge, and that works really well for certain use cases. But again, does it have the scale and the impact of doing it left to right across the total estate? No, but it still is revenue generating into new areas. And as Warren was saying, how do we get the industry from single digit to double digit?
Thanks, Rich. Look, I did say that we'd come to the back of the room. Tony, have you found someone at the back of the room in the deep recesses?
Neil had his hand up before. Oh, it's up again now. Hang on.
Middle of the room.
I'm not really at the back of the room, but I'll take it. So it's kind of interesting. I built BT Network Cloud many years ago for a 5G rollout cloud native, and it was hard. So everyone's saying that this is easy. Maybe it's got easier, but I think it's brutally hard, especially when you're debugging PCI drivers because someone wrote it this way and someone wrote it that way. And I would challenge anyone who thinks this easy to think again, because I'm going to use a very well-known common line. If it was easy, everybody would have one, and they don't. I do agree with the gentleman from Red Hat that telcos are looking at this, because what did they do? They went and bought Nokia's full stack or Ericsson's full stack, and then they couldn't run the use cases they wanted to run on them because they're like, we're not going to support you. But this is not an easy thing to build. It is super hard. Even the standards from OCP don't actually come out to work in the way that you think that they're going to work. And if you want, the reason why, so when you've got a really hard thing like that, and then you've got a bunch of leaders that say, I get fired if we screw up, no one's going to go build this. And actually, even if you build the platform, migrating to it, or we're going to migrate 30 million SIMs to this platform, it's so difficult to do. So I just I'd like to understand from those that said it was easy, what has changed over the last few years that makes it easy?
Thank you, Neil. So is this still a very difficult undertaking?
I want to answer this.
Warren, go for it.
I'm shocked that you'd ask a question, Neil. No, and I hope no one heard or said this was easy. It's very difficult. as I've said, moving, as soon as you go from the core where you do have more homogeneous hardware, right? You go to the edge, and as you say, just every site potentially has something different, however small it is. And by the way, things like drift of hardware, of drivers and things, the exponential problem becomes massive when you go to the edge, right? Frankly, the RAN edge, where you have tens or hundreds of thousands of sites. So controlling that through AI is part of what has to happen. Can it be done? It is being done. In the US, we have a massive rollout with Verizon where they're doing it. They're running into problems all the time, I'll be honest, right? It's a very complicated environment. Disaggregating this system is very complicated. So working together as an industry to find solutions to these complex problems is the only way we're going to do it, frankly. And it's going to be a consortium of people, but folks like Red Hat and Wind River working together to find better solutions to infrastructure problems like that is the only way we're going to solve it. And I want to add something to that really quickly, where we heard we're going to create a more agile environment. And while I agree with that from a lot of the software services that sit on top of infrastructure, these environments can't be agile at the infrastructure layer, right? We can't afford to try things. Like you say, people get fired if PCI drivers go down, if hardware doesn't run, if network cards don't work. Things don't work. In America, 911 service fails. People are sitting before Senate subcommittees describing, why did your services go down? So there's a balance to be made here between how much we can build the infrastructure quickly and how much services we can put on top. Where services can be agile, the infrastructure part can't be, right? We have to be very careful and very pragmatic with how we go to the cloud native in terms of infrastructure.
Thanks, Warren. That's really good reply to Neil's point there. And Richie, you want to come in as well?
I was just going to say, to Neil's point, I think we spend as long with operators on operating model in a horizontal cloud than we do selling the technology and the technological response, right? I think it's critical. We were sat recently with a head of network ops in a tier one, and he's saying, if I go global with this, I'm going to be doing 500, 600 releases a year. How the hell am I now responsible for all of that when before it was obviously managed by somebody else for me in a contained environment? So the shift of risk, the shift of ownership, we all talk about this across our industry, the lack of a single throat to choke because it's now your own throat in effect, right? And I think that's the bit that takes an awful lot of time. So it's definitely not easy, Neil, but there is models that are being built, and as we go operator to operator, that is obviously the learning increases, the skills increase, and the ability to offer the thing that fits. I think is definitely the progress.
Thanks, Rich. Gary?
I think I was going to say that saying it's a known problem space, which is probably where we've got to in the last few years, is not the same as saying it's easy. You could choose any number of analogies. Rocket science is hard, but we managed to send people into space. So I think we are getting to a point where that known problem space is making it not easier, but we know the patterns, we know how to do this a little bit more reliably now, and that's going to improve. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's going to take a village from the ecosystem and the industry to do it, but it is a known problem space, but it remains hard.
Thanks, Gary. Franz, to Neil's point there, is it getting easier? Are we doing things collectively as an industry we identify it's difficult, to make it easier, make it simpler?
Yeah, the thing came down the long route. I mean, 2019, I agree, we had all this discussion, and are you allowed to use SRV, yes, no, and this and that, and faults here and there and things, but it developed quite a bit. It developed on the supply side, so it's much better understood what to take care of. Dependencies are much better understood, so application suppliers know what they need to look at on the driver side, so there's a much better integration. I measure it on how long, we do the application by application, how long does it take to onboard a new application in that environment, and that time decreased significantly. The amount of issues we found and how long it took them to get this whole thing stable and scalable, and they are good enough to start first real network pilots and then scale out, that really went down tremendously. I mean, if this would not have happened in 5 years, then I think we would have done something wrong. Yeah. Is it piece of cake? No. But we know much better now how to look at it. We have the right test procedures. We know the right staging procedures, what to test first. If this is passed, you can be so sure this is going, and you go next step. So the whole mechanism is much better. And also, and we didn't have that so much on the challenges. It's not only organization, it's probably even more mindset of people, what you just said, that you are responsible now as DT and as a DT employee, and you cannot blame a single supplier anymore if things go wrong, because it's your duty to make sure this is going. This change in mindset and this much more collaborative working, and there's not this vendor you can beat all the time, and he accepts because he gets paid for that. That was one of the biggest things to bring through, and now people know only if they work together, if they're set together as a team, figure out what is the issue, only then they can succeed, and suppliers sitting on the same table like our people, but we know in the end, we are responsible for integration, there is not any third-party company. That is really the biggest thing, and that's what we see every time we bring a new application. We also take care that the people who were in an old model going here, they are going with us, they learn how to work in that new environment. We make sure the mindset journey is happening. And that's one of the key enablers to make this model successful.
Great, thanks, Franz. Now, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to put one final quick question to you all. This is the Cloud Native Beyond the Core session, and we heard earlier that maybe beyond the core, maybe about 30% Cloud Native transformation journey progress. Subjective, I know, so it's a rough figure. But in order for us to double that, to get into 60, 70, 80%, where should telcos, so are there any specific domains that should be tackled next to accelerate this, to find the elevator and get on there and get to the penthouse as quick as possible? And what sort of timeframes? I mean, you talked about your timeframe for the core. But what are we looking at here? Gary, are any specific domains that you'd recommend?
I mean, what I would say is I think that a cloud-native network is not going to realize its full potential without cloud-native orchestration automation. So if I had to spend $1 on it, I would probably look at the OSS space as the next priority. I think I'm always reminded that somebody once told me that the peak of mainframe install capacity was in the late 2000s, like 2008, 2009. And the reason I say that is it takes time for this to reach the edges of the business. So I think the timeline is going to be longer than we perhaps expect, and that's okay. So I think, to double, I think we're probably looking at the 2029, 30 time frame for me.
Yeah, timelines are always longer than we expect, aren't they?
Can we wait?
Yeah, Warren?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think operations, right? Day 1, 2 operations has to be the next. That's the big winner, right? Until we do that, we really don't have a lot to lean on. So I think we have to get the OSS to the BSS, get that operations part into a cloud native environment. And I agree. I think I'd like to say it's going to happen this year, but I think you are talking a 3-year project.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, no, I think I echo that. We're expanding our portfolio to deal with day zero, day one operations in order to help and support, and again, you give some bigger support to, rather than operators just moving into this scary world of open source, But I think, and maybe because I've got a billing background as well, BSS always seems to be the next element after you get the automation and the orchestration working. So yeah, that would be it for us.
Thanks, Rich. And final word to our co-host. Any advice for telcos as to where to focus on next?
Start going. The most important thing is if you're not on the journey already, start it. Go down that route. Start with the most, from an application perspective, most easy to do, which is 5G core, because that's cloud native by design. Of course, there's enough stuff there, but there's sufficient suppliers, full thing. So start small, start learning, and grow from there. That's what we did some years ago, and it worked out, and that's what we are going to do going forward, right? We started in the core, we will do that, we have a clear plan, and then we will step by step add additional domains as they are ready and they are in their timing and development are ready to come. We will provide the whole machine. The good thing is whatever you bring in there, you immediately benefit from all the stuff we discussed because that's part of the environment.
Great, Franz, thank you very much. Well, we must end our session there because lunch is awaiting us and we can't delay lunch. So let's have a round of applause for our guests, please. Thank you.